Alrighty, so it's been a while since I've last done a preview, and especially a while since I've done a preview on the same day when the game is going on. But that's exactly what we're doing today, as we got 12 games that's going to be happening later today, and this is the last match week. We're going to have that many games that's going to be happening in a midweek action. I mean, we still will have some midweek action next week too, during the international break, but those games are pretty much just makeup games. For earlier season, either because of weather or because of the Leeds Cup situation. But let us actually get into the first of 12 games. And again, these games are going to be all concentrated between the window of 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, all the way up to 12:30 a.m. Eastern time and 9:30 p.m. Pacific. And we start off with Charlotte versus Toronto FC. And keep in mind, there are some matchup here where teams can clinch their playoff position, and also some big playoff 6 pointer too. Now for Charlotte, obviously this you got to say it's a must win for them. I mean, against a TFC team that pretty much have flat out quit this season with a 4-10-17 record on point of winning the wooden spoon, whereas Charlotte 7-2-11, and this is the first of 5 games that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. All-time meeting. Even though Charlotte, this is a must-win game for them, they have not won against Toronto in the free matchup. Both of these teams have played. Toronto has won 2 out of those 3 games. So, yeah, in a must win game, it's tough to say that when you haven't won a matchup against your opposition. But yeah, just judging by how things have gone, and especially for Charlotte, 4 points back of the playoffs. They do have a game in hand, which will be really helpful, and that game in hand will be against Miami, which will be incredibly helpful because that is one of those teams that a lot of people say that they still have a chance to make it to the playoffs. But they also have won one out of their last 15 games. I mean, this team is pretty much in a free fall ever since the beginning of June, and that yeah, they need to get a big win in this game against a Toronto team that, as I mentioned, they've already eliminated for playoffs, and it looks like not only they currently hold the wooden spoon spot, but it seems like they're going to win the wooden spoon spot, knowing the fact that Colorado has been playing much better, and it seems like they don't want to win the wooden spoon spot. So yeah, for Charlotte, you got to say it's a must-win game for them if they want to keep up in the playoff race. But moving on, we got FC Cincinnati versus the New York Red Bulls. So Cincinnati 19-8-14, while the Red Bulls 8-10-13. All-time meeting 5-4-4 in favor of the Red Bulls. And for Cincinnati, they already clinched supporter shield, and that I'm gonna say the same thing about St. Louis a little bit later on. I mean, now the question, if you're Pat Nolan, is that do you still want to play your starter, or maybe rest some of your starters, because during this week we have 3 games in 7 days for a lot of these teams, and for a lot of these teams that has the chance to rest their starter and don't have to play all their starter during the stretch between 3 games in 7 days. You would think that they might take a chance to. Though that being said, they are also 9 points away from breaking the most point in MLS in a season, breaking New England's record that they have with 73 points, but they only have 3 games left this season. So they have to be perfect if they want to break that record. And again, I mean, it would be great for them to break the record, and they'll definitely be remembered for a long time. But how much the fact that, they will probably prioritize MLS Cup playoffs rather than that record, because I think at the end of the day, as much as it would be nice for Cincinnati to break that record, there's no doubt their ultimate goal, not only winning the Supporters Shield, but also winning MLS Cup. And with the way that they're about to endure a bloodbath in the Eastern Conference, and I mentioned the East, it's unpredictable in a way where there's just so many good teams that you can easily pick one of them to be favorites of representing the East in the MLS Cup. I think Pat Nolan might be thinking about resting his guys coming into this one. But for the Red Bulls, they're 3 points back off the playoffs, and that yeah, if they want to keep their longest active playoff streak alive, they need to win games. And that has not happened in the last couple of games, and that the last game was a really tough loss for them too, and that they're gonna have to try to bounce back coming into this game, and it's not gonna be easy against a Cincinnati team that have only lost once this season at TQ Stadium. Now we move on to the next one, which is Montreal versus the Houston Dynamo. So Montreal 11-4-16, and Houston 12-8-11. And I would like to say that this is also kind of a must-win game for Montreal, though I wouldn't say it as much of a must-win game as it is with Charlotte facing against Toronto, because Montreal facing against a Houston team that is playing very confident right now. But in terms of the all-time meeting, both teams have 8 wins and only 1 draw. So this is a matchup that besides that one occurrence, there's always a winner out of this game. And I say it's a must-win kind of for Montreal. Is that this is a home game. We know they're trying to ride that old kind of ways to make it to the playoffs, where you win your home games and get draws on the road, you can make it to the playoffs. And right now for Montreal, lately they haven't been able to get wins at Stars Saputo, and that's kind of what got them into this spot where they are a team that is just above the red line right now. Now the good news for Montreal is that they do kind of have the tiebreaker over teams that are below them. They're actually in a freeway tie right now in ninth place, but they do have the tiebreakers on wins. They're tied with DC, and there's also tied with one other team. I think it was Chicago, the team for the ninth spot. But like I said, they have the tiebreaker over both of them. Well, for Houston, they clinched the playoffs with a win in this game against Montreal, and they're only 2 points back of second place. Again, for all those teams that are currently in a playoff spot in the Western Conference, there's still a chance that they can get as high as second place and can get home field advantage heading into the first round of the playoffs. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting game, and that again, for Montreal, knowing that this is a team that struggle on the road, and I think they still have some road games remaining, they have to win this game against Houston if they want to have chances of making the playoffs, because teams behind them are very hungry to try to take their spot in the playoffs if they don't get a win in this game against the Dynamo. Moving on, we got New England versus the Columbus Crew. So New England 14-10-6, while the Crew 14-8-9. All-time meeting 39-21 and 28 in favor of Columbus. For the Revs, they're currently third in the standings. They're 2 points back of Orlando with a game in hand. So yeah, if they do win that game in hand, they will get themselves back into second position. And as much as I know a lot of people are sleeping on the Revs because of the off-field situation, they haven't played that badly ever since that off the field situation. I mean, yes, they had that kind of meltdown during that part where they keep blowing leads late in the game, but they didn't lose those games. They're still a really good team, and that you kind of just sense that this is a very resilient team that no matter all the off field distraction, all the noise that is going on off the field, on the field they're still performing at a rate where they're trying to surprise everybody that they can still be a contender in the Eastern Conference. Whereas for Columbus, they're definitely a contender in the Eastern Conference, and they're currently fifth and 1 point back of fourth place. The reason why I want to mention fourth place a lot is because that is a place, if you're above those places, you will get home field advantage. And I know this season in the first round of playoffs, that home field advantage kind of gone a little away because because it's a best of three series, you are going to have every team at least having one home games. But that being said, that crucial game three, in case if a team aren't able to win the second game or lose the first game, that is, and they go to a crucial game three, it's going to be at the house of the team that is currently in the top four spot of their respective conference. So yeah, and knowing Columbus this season has been a very good home team. I mean, on the road they have been a little bit better this season, not by much that is, but at home they are definitely a team that if you face against this Crew team at low.com field, yeah, you're probably not going to walk away with all 3 points relatively easily. So yeah, we'll see how this game is going to turn out, and this could also be a matchup that we could definitely see in the playoffs, depending on how the seeding is going to work. Speaking of a matchup that we could see in the playoffs too, we got Philly versus Atlanta United. So the Union 14-9-8, while Atlanta 13-10-8. As this game will start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, and it's the last game that starts at that time. All-time meeting 5-5-4 in favor of Atlanta, and key points coming out of this game, the Union, they're currently fourth place and 3 points back of the second position. Again, there is a bit of a logjam between fifth all the way to second in the Eastern Conference right now, whereas for Atlanta, they're currently sixth in the standings. They're 2 points back of fourth place too. So again, it's important for me to talk about that because that is a spot where you're at least going to get home field advantage in that best of three series. But yeah, this is also again could be a matchup we could see in the playoffs. I mean, again, depending on seeding, we could see see this matchup in the first round. And if we do see this matchup in the first round, get ready for a bloodbath because you know both of these teams, they do not like each other whatsoever. There's always tends to be a rivalry between both of these teams. Really kind of going back to that CONCACAF Champions League kind of tie with both of these teams were playing and that they kind of forge a little bit of a rivalry between both. Now, obviously, that rivalry kind of simmered down a little bit, but don't be surprised. You know, these kind of matchup between both of these teams, there always tends to be some bad feelings that's being shared, and that I won't be surprised we will see one of that again. I mean, it's not a union match. If there is not a bad blood that is being shared throughout the game because you know Jim Curran team love to play a physical kind of game. Now, moving on, we got Austin versus DC United. Now, if you want to talk about an ultimate playoff six pointer, this is the one it is. Now, even though this is not a playoff six pointer in the same conference. It's actually an interconference matchup. Well, this is a playoff six pointer in a way where you know both of these teams desperately need a win and are kind of in a must win situation. You know, for Austin 9-8-14, while DC 9-10-13, and this is the first of I believe 4 games that's going to be starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Now, all time meeting 1-0-0 in favor of Austin, and the reason why Austin needs to win in this one is because they're 6 points below the red line, and it seems like it's getting away from them. One win in the last 10 game in all competition. I mentioned it's been an absolute meltdown for them ever since that embarrassing Leeds Cup tournament that they had. Whereas for DC, as much as I thought it was a good draw in the game against Vancouver in the last one, you know they're still currently sitting in 10th. They're still below the red line, and they're tied with Montreal on points, but they don't have the tiebreaker. So again, one of the thing about getting draws on the road, while it's good to get draws on the road, it does hurt your chances in terms of the tiebreaker because the first tiebreaker is win, and right now Montreal has that tiebreaker because Montreal has 11 wins. I think DC currently only have 9 wins this season. So yeah, again, you know in some way, as much as DC would love to get a draw in this one, where if they do get a draw and Montreal loses, then they get themselves back above the red line. But that being said, it also depends on the Chicago Reserve, as I mentioned. They're another team that's currently tied with DC on points total. And that the other thing that is a little concern for DC is the fact that out of those 3 teams that I mentioned that are tied in ninth place, they have played the most game. They have played 32 games. This is the 33rd game that they're going to be playing. They have one more game after this. So the window is definitely closing in terms of them making the playoffs. So yeah, again, this is a game that you got to say that it's a must win facing against a team that is an absolute free fall. So yeah, I have a feeling whoever wins this one, is gonna help their playoff chances. But if this game does end in a draw, it does not help anybody cases. So both of these teams, I have a feeling they're gonna go for the win, and it could be exciting to see when both teams are going for the win and not getting a draw. Those are usually some of the most exciting and most chaotic kind of MLS game that we've seen. And plus, it is a midweek action, so if you know anything about midweek in terms of this season, is chaos basically reign supreme in terms of these midweek action. But that being said, I am now going to change boards and look at the last 6 games to finish off the midweek action of match week number 36. So moving on, we got Chicago versus Inter Miami, and you could say that this is also a playoff six-pointer. Consider both of these teams are below the red line, but both of these teams still have a shot in terms of making the playoffs. But Chicago 9-10-12, while Miami is 9-6-15. All-time meeting, the Fire does have the all-time meeting with a 3-1-1 record over Miami. So Chicago has won 3 out of the last 5 games against Inter Miami, and they kind of have Miami number at least in these last 5 games. But the key points coming into this game is that it is going to be a sold out game at Soldier Field, and it will be one of the biggest crowd we ever see at Soldier Field, or at least in the new Soldier Field. That is 61,000 is going to be expected to attend this game, and you probably know why that is the case. They're there to see Messi, but unfortunately, those 61,000 that are there, well, I would say maybe about 50,000 of them are expect to see Messi. They're about to be in for some disappointment. Probably there's going to be no Messi again in this one. You know, there's still question of whether or not what exactly is the extent of his injury, and is he going to be at least be fit enough to play for this Inter Miami team down the stretch because they need him. They're still only 4 points back of the playoffs with a game in hand, but it's pretty clear that he means a lot to this team. And besides Messi in terms of not being available, I think one other player that is kind of overshadowed in this of them hoping they can get him back is Jordi Alba. I mean, as much as I know Messi has been the big talking point, People forget that Jordi Alba has not been playing for Inter Miami, and I think that's a huge loss too for this team. Considering you look at this defense for Miami, it has not been good in the last couple of games, and you can see how much of a presence that he bring to the back line. So we'll see whether or not if he's going to be available in this one. But like I said, for those people that bought this tickets, and yeah, I mean, again, I feel like we talk about Miami always tends to get a home game when they play against a team that probably with some of the casual fans are not really supporting the Chicago Fire, but are probably there to just see Messi. I mean, I guess you could say that this is kind of almost like a home game for Inter Miami. But again, we'll see whether or not if Messi would play, and also Jordi Alba would play too. And that again, it's a big game to consider. Whoever wins this one definitely have a bigger shot in terms of making the playoffs this season. Then we move on into the next game, and now we talk about the Western Conference. Well, actually, there's actually one more game that relates to the Eastern Conference, but we're now starting to talk about some of the Western Conference game. And we start off with FC Dallas versus the Colorado Rapids. Now, Dallas 10, 11, and 10, while Colorado is 5, 11, and 15, an all-time meeting. 39, 20, and 34 in favor of Dallas. But the key points coming into this game, while Dallas is currently ninth in the standings, and they're currently 3 points above the red line, and I believe they have a game in hand over the teams that's currently in 10th in Sporting KC. Although they're also 3 points above the red line over Minnesota in 11th place, and both of them have played 31 games. The good news for this one is that they do play against Colorado. The bad news is Colorado has not been a pushover. So we talk about how the Rapids has been kind of like the Santa Claus of the Western Conference. They've been giving points away for free. It seems like they kind of stopped doing that. At least ever since Chris Loto has took over as an interim head coach. And even though they're eliminated in the playoffs, this Rapids team are still playing hard. And this is the thing is that when you do face against some of these teams that are eliminated, as much as you think that they have nothing to play for, and they're already thinking about the golf course in the off season, some of these teams are still playing for jobs. And it is pretty clear that there's a lot of these Colorado Rapids player, unlike TFC and their whole situation, a lot of these Rapids players are still playing for their jobs, and they're still playing hard under their new intern head coach because they're 2-1-2 ever since Chris Little has took over as intern. Now, that's not really something to say that it's an amazing record, and maybe one will get Chris Little maybe a chance to be the head coach of this team. But it's definitely a record that is much better consider the what has happened during the dying years of Robin Fraser, how this team just looked really poor, and that again, this is a team that they're there to play some spoiler row, and I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of teams that's below the red line are hoping Colorado can do the same thing. And not to mention, even in the losses that Colorado has played, they haven't been just losses that they just have give up. Like the game against Portland that they lost, that which is one of them. They were able to come back from 2-0 down and tie it at 2-2, ultimately losing 3-2. That's not a Rapids team that we see a couple of weeks ago that would have done that. And then in the Seattle game, I know they were down 2-0 too, but they got one back and they were still fighting hard late in the game to get a draw. So again, this Colorado team, I don't think teams should take this team lightly, and I'm pretty sure Dallas are not going to take this team lightly too because again, I will also like to say that for Dallas, this is also could be a trap game for them because I know for a fact that next game for them, they got that big playoff 6-pointer against the San Jose Earthquakes, and that they could easily look at that game and see this game as overshadow this game, and I'm looking forward to that one. And next thing you know, if they don't win this game, they could find themselves below the red line, and then that game against the Quakes can even means much bigger. So in some way for Dallas, as much as they need to win this one, they need to avoid the dreaded trap in this game against a Rapids team that, like I said, they are a team that they're not afraid to play spoiler, and a team that I don't think is a push over, especially when you look at how they play ever since Chris Little took over as the interim head coach. Now, moving on, we got Nashville versus Orlando City. So Nashville 12-9-9, while Orlando City is 15-9-7. And in terms of the all-time meetings, there's been a lot of draws. 5 out of the last 8 matchup or out of the 9 matchup has ended in a draw, but Nashville does have a 3-5-1 record over Orlando. Now for Nashville, they're currently 7th in the standings, but they have not been playing well ever since they have lost the Leagues Cup final. They've only won one game ever since that stretch. Well, for Orlando, they're currently second in the Eastern Conference, but there's a lot of teams below them that are hungry to try to take that second spot away from them. So yeah, this should be a very interesting matchup. I mean, it's always an interesting matchup when you have both of these teams play against each other. But again, I feel like for a team that needs to win a game and desperately needs to win, probably Nashville. Again, you don't want to head into the playoffs cold, especially with the way that the Eastern Conference is going to be an absolute bloodbath. For Gary Smith team, they definitely don't want to hit that playoffs cold and potentially getting knocked out in the first round, as what we have seen in the past couple of seasons. But that being said, moving on, we got LAFC versus Minnesota. So, for LAFC, they're 12, 9, and 10, while Minnesota is 9, 11, and 11. And this is actually the first of three games that's going to be starting at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. A lot of games. That's going to be late night games, which means that there's going to be some crazy MLS after dark drama in terms of these games. I mean, surely it has to be because some of these West Coast games can sometimes be really crazy. But all-time meeting 2-5-2 all is the all-time meeting. So this is another all-time meeting where pretty much five out of the nine games that both of these teams play has ended in a draw. Now the key points for this one, LAFC, despite the fact that they're currently fourth place and they're only 1 point back of second, because right now, if you're a team that is currently above the red line in the Western Conference, you still have a shot in terms of getting that second position because of how much of a logjam that is in terms of the seeding. But the problem for LAFC is that they have not scored in 360 minutes. I mean, it's been a pretty bad run of form that this LAFC team has got in this goal drought. Again, they have to snap out of this goal drought. Like if they don't snap out of this goal drought soon, I have a feeling this could be a one and done team heading into the playoffs, and it would be a short campaign in terms of defending their MLS Cup champion crown. Whereas for Minnesota, again, I mentioned teams that needs to win. Yeah, this is a must win for them too. And I know it's crazy to say when you have to play against LAFC, which is it's not an easy team to get points, but knowing the fact that LAFC have not been playing well, and as I mentioned, they have not gave up a goal in 300 or not score a goal in 316 minutes. They clearly don't have any confidence whatsoever going for in goal. They have to take advantage of it, and not to mention, I really feel like this season it feels like their life support in terms of making the playoffs is going to have to go in terms of their road form. And their road form is still pretty good. I mean, they have won 7 games this season on the road, tied with RSL for the most this season on the road. So, and I always said I'm more comfortable seeing this team playing on the road compared to when they're playing at home, because at home, it's been. Let's not talk about their home form, considering I mentioned it a lot. So, yeah, they have to win this game on the road, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so. They're currently 11, 3 points back off the playoff, but I've only won one out of the last 8 games. So that's another thing that could be a problem for this Minnesota team. They haven't won a lot of games. So in some way, this is kind of a matchup between two teams that are not in good form. So this is also why when you have this kind of matchup, whoever gets the 3 points will really help their causes in the latter part of the season. And just as a Minnesota United fan, I'm hoping this will be a game where they can get a win so that they can have that belief of making the playoffs. Because I've said before, it will be absolutely devastating to see this team miss out on the playoffs, consider of the talent that they had. This team should not be missing the playoffs with the talent that they had this year. Then we go to Seattle, where they play against the LA Galaxy. So the Sounders 12, 9, and 10, while the Galaxy at 8, 11, and 11, and the Sounders 16, 13, and 16 in terms of the all-time record. So both of these teams have won 16 games. Now, key points for Seattle, they're currently third in the standings, but they're tied second with RSL, though they don't have the tiebreaker as RSL has that in wins. But something tells me won't be surprised if this team does finish second, because besides last year, that's kind of the moniker of the Seattle Sounders. They always find a way to finish second in the Western Conference. But for the Galaxy, even though they're currently 13 and they're kind of still way back in the playoff race, and maybe the windows are starting to shut for them, they do have a game in hand, so that does make it at least possible that they can still make it to the playoffs. But yeah, they need to win those game. They absolutely need to win that game in hand. They're 6 points back of the playoff position, and this is also another game where you could say that it could be a must-win game for the Galaxy too. I mean, the Galaxy has been playing pretty well lately. that is if you don't look at the defense. I mean, the defense has been pretty abysmal in the last couple of games, and I've said before, if you're a neutral and you want to see a game that is guaranteed to have a high scoring affair, watch an LA Galaxy game because I have a feeling there could be fireworks in this game too, knowing how the Galaxy has been playing the last couple of games. Heck, the last 3 games, look at the result. 3-3 against oh god, I forgot who they play. Oh, Portland. Yeah, 3-3 against Portland in the last game. They had a 3-3 draw against Austin on the road, and then they won 4-3 against Minnesota at home. So those games are just crazy and just kind of a goal fest. And I won't be surprised this could be the same case, even though Seattle is not known for a team that scored tons of goals this season. I mean, they occasionally could do so if they wanted to, and knowing how bad this Galaxy defense is, if this Sounders attack is feeling like it, this could be a goal fest that we could be seeing between both of these teams. Now, moving on into the last game, we got Vancouver versus St. Louis City. So Vancouver 11-10-10, while St. Louis 17-5-10, as this game is going to be the last game that I'm going to talk about. But St. Louis 1-0-0, and in terms of the key points coming into this one, well, the 1-0-0 is basically the all-time meeting that is. But the key points for the Whitecaps coming into this game is that they're currently sixth place. They're currently 5 points above the red line, and technically they can clinch a playoff spot if they win and if the other resort goes in favor of them. And as I mentioned, for teams that are currently above the red line, you still have a chance to get second place. They're only 3 points back of second place. Whereas for St. Louis, they pretty much have nothing to play for. They're one of the few teams that really don't have anything to play for. They're currently at the top of the Western Conference, and they already clinched top spot. But like what I said about Cincinnati earlier, Bradley Cornell's team, it's going to be interesting to see whether he's going to rest some guys in this one. And I'm assuming he probably will rest some of his guy, knowing it's a midweek game, and usually midweek games are times where teams does rest some of his player. And Bradley Cornell has done a good job in terms of rotating the squad a little bit. He has given some of the reserves some chances to play, and I have a feeling he's going to do the same thing here because, well, yes, they're 2 points away from breaking the most point in a season for an expansion team. I'm pretty sure that's not what he really cares. He really wants to rest some his team so that they can be laser focused heading into their inaugural playoff campaign that they're about to endure, and all those games is going to be at a rock. Um, Allow and rock partying rock kind of place known as City Park. So yeah, again, with St. Louis starting a relatively weak team, this is a big opportunity for Vancouver to capitalize. I mean, Vancouver does have some tough games to remain for the remaining of this season, and this is probably the toughest one. But if St. Louis is going to be playing against a relatively weak team and Vancouver, they have been very good so far in terms of the attack. Just don't ask about the defense. The defense has been kind of a little bit problematic in the last couple of games. This is a good chance for them to get all 3 points and really solidify themselves to make it to the playoffs this season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at all 12 of this game that's going to be happening later tonight. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games. And as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.